Hi, everyone. Thank you all so much for joining. I'm really sorry for being late, and I really hope this still worked out in your schedule, but I really appreciate that you're here. Let me know if you can hear me okay. I'm going to pop that in the comments now real quick. You can hear me okay, because that's how it works with amateur audio. This is like literally my microphone. Okay, so we have a ton to talk about today. Most of which is going to revolve around the recent allegations against a Seattle chef, and I do have a couple of channel updates and some really exciting announcements for my channel that I really want to let y'all know about. So let's dive into the real deal here, which is my rundown of what happened with the Eduoardo Jordan situation. I just want to get a couple things out of the way just to make sure that they're said. And just to make sure that we have a baseline, you and I have a baseline as to what it is that I'm going to be discussing and how I feel about the situation in general. So, okay, really quick. First of all, I believe the survivors. I'm so impressed by their courage in wanting to come forward and tell anybody really about what had happened, and just let the truth out. Okay, thank you, Erica. And I also want to acknowledge that there are people who have been victimized by that chef and did not ever feel comfortable coming forward before this. They did not participate in Sunday's article. And so I just want to let them all know, if they're listening and end up hearing this, that I feel you too. It's hard to disclose your personal trauma, especially in the case of kind of a very public sphere, talking to journalists about it. And so I just want y'all to know that it's okay that you didn't step forward if you didn't step forward, and your experience is still as valid as any of them are. I personally am also a survivor of sexual assault and harassment in the restaurant industry, in the meat industry, and then also not in those industries too. And I've never named names within my industry specifically because what happens to survivors most of the time? And in fact, but you can read a little bit about my experiences in an Eater article that I was fortunate to participate in, that was written by my very dear friend, Stacey Wynn. I'll link you in the description below. So if you're watching the recording of this, the link will be there, but not if you're watching it live. Okay, number 2, shout out to the journalists who listened to survivors, advocated for the story, and got this story published in a very official manner. Specifically, Jackie Variano and Asia Fields. It's not easy, and this kind of integrity and honesty has been super missing from food writing. Because headlines are always about either the taste or experience or the dining experience in some way, and it's never about how these things come to your table. And I love that this is something that was worth real journalistic work to bring to light. So thank you to those journalists who did all that work. You know what else? I also super appreciate how they allowed many of the survivors to remain anonymous so that the survivors' careers and lives would not be defined by this moment moving forward, which knowing what we know about people often who come forward, that's something that they are defined by later on in life. And it's not fair that they had to have this trauma and then it is then revisited upon them later on in their lives and careers. It's not cool. So I love that they allowed the survivors to remain anonymous if they chose to do so, and is just very impressive. And number 3, this is one I want to get out of the way at the very beginning because it's pretty touchy, and so we're about to get into the deep end. I hope y'all are here for it. This case of this particular chef doing these terrible things should not in any way be used as an argument against representation in food media, media in general, business success, accolades, etc. Eduardo was out there doing something very important for his community. And although the method was extremely flawed and traumatizing, unfortunately, we're going to talk about possible reasons why things turned out the way they did. But I just want to make sure that we don't channel our collective frustration at this one individual towards the entire Black community in general. Let's not conflate our frustration with one person, with an entire community, and lose empathy for their struggle. It's like, please don't. I just know anecdotally that there are going to be people who are going to say that this is why certain people like shouldn't be in charge or like shouldn't be in positions of power. And I want to say for the record that that is patently false and very bigoted of people to say. Again, anecdotally, I've literally had a cishet white man, semi-famous butcher slide into my DMs following the aforementioned Eater article by my friend Stacy, saying that representation can be dangerous, and then went on to say, he went on to mention some women who he did not believe was worthy of her professional success. I just want to say, maybe if more than one or two women or people of color could get into positions of power or authority, we wouldn't have to bank all of our hopes and dreams on whether or not this one person is going to be perfect or not. So yeah, it's not about representation. Also, representation is a damn low bar. And it's not quite bare minimum, but it's pretty damn close. So don't take that shit away from us. Okay, now that we've gotten those statements out of the way, let's cover the bullet points and catch everybody up in case anybody was not able to read the articles over the weekend. I usually do like a who, what, where, when, and why. So who and what is that Chef Eduardo Jordan of June Baby, Salare, and Lucinda Grains, and then also a bunch of other contracted like licensed things with like Blue Apron, etc., has been accused by over a dozen former employees of sexual misconduct in the workplace, where those restaurants are in Seattle, like the Ravenna Wedgwood neighborhood-ish, when the earliest allegation that I think I saw in the article was in 2012, and the latest was in 2019, when the aforementioned journalist started the process of writing this article. And so who the fuck knows what happened between 2019 and now. How? Honestly, I'm not going to detail the events here. I have linked the article. I will link the articles in the description below, so you can read them yourself. It's very well laid out, and you kind of can't deny it at this point. Like, that shit happened. And another point about those of us in the restaurant industry, these are very common scenarios that you would find yourself in with a chef or somebody of authority, and so it just speaks to how like common and possible this thing can happen. Again, I'm going to link the articles, the 3 Seattle Times articles in the description below. One is the original one that broke Sunday morning, is all about the allegations. 2, the second one is Eduardo Jordan's official response, which we will cover in a moment when we talk about what it is, what an apology is supposed to be, because literally nobody knows how the fuck to do that anymore. And then the third one, the third story is the best, because it is about how when his existing staff found out about the Sunday morning story of the allegations, they got together and decided to walk out. They wouldn't work for him anymore. And I love this move of solidarity. I think it was so courageous, and truly, truly self-sacrificing, because like, I don't know if y'all work in the restaurant industry, but like there's not a ton of leeway between your paychecks there. So we'll talk more about them later, but I do just want to like shout out to them because that was awesome. Why this happened. So this is truly the thick of what it is that we want to talk about today. And really quick, in my humble opinion, this is just one example of toxic masculinity and patriarchy in action. And it's a symptom of a much larger systemic issue. That's not to belittle the trauma that any of these people have experienced at the literal gross hands of this man. But I want to go on to say that like, it's too easy and very dangerous to hyper focus on this one guy in this one industry. Some things that I was seeing on Instagram in my comment section and in my messages from people regarding this subject were three main themes. One, a lot of people were like, I'm not surprised. Two, the second thing is like, people were saying, oh, we need to weed all these like bad guys out. And three, some people were saying, wow, the restaurant industry is so bad, but I'm glad that my industry isn't like that. And okay, there's a lot to unpack in all three of these sentiments. So I'd like to respond to each of them. And for the record, I really want to just say that I appreciate the sentiment and the intention behind these people's commenting, because like they're trying to declare that they disapprove of what Jordan was doing, which like, yes, thank you for being explicit about that stuff. It is important that like we say and declare that like this stuff is unacceptable, because honestly, like a lot of it slides because people are unwilling to speak up about it. So yes, thank you. Thank you to everybody who commented and DM'd me on Instagram over the last couple of days about this subject, because yeah, it's true. Like all you guys are right. Thank you. I do think though that we can do better than that like level of generalized vitriol. Like, it's good that that's like where your heart is, but let's dive a little bit further into these particular subjects. So the first one was like, oh, I'm not surprised. These articles aren't about surprising anybody. Like when people come forward with these allegations, it's not meant to surprise anybody. The point is that they're exposing what's going on in an undeniable way. There are a lot of deniers, apologists, and gaslighters who will say these aren't really problems, or like that didn't really happen, or that's just how the industry is. Jordan himself, in his official apology, repeatedly said that he just didn't remember that any of this had happened. And like, we'll go over that more later, but no, that's not acceptable to just not remember. No, we're not going to let that slide. But we need these stories to come to light so that people can truly acknowledge these systemic issues and address them. Sometimes also I feel like it's a defense mechanism from folks who have existed in unjust systems and therefore like internalized those unjust systems. They've also like accepted a lot of the abuses that they've experienced, like thinking that it's like paying their dues, or like, oh, you just got to be like cool about it. I'm kind of speaking from experience. And so if that speaks to you, like you have had those thoughts of like, well, that's just how it's supposed to be, blah, blah, blah. Like you got to pay your dues and then you get to be in a position of power, and then they can't like screw with you anymore. I just want to say it's not okay. It's not okay that you were abused during your career. It's not okay that these people are getting abused now. It's not okay that it happened to you. And us speaking up about it now is not denying you your moment of justice. And honestly, like, it's okay for you now to come out and say like, hey, that stuff wasn't cool. Like I experienced this stuff. I didn't like it. And what we're trying to do now by being honest about it and open about it is to make sure that people don't have to experience it in the future, because it is unnecessary. So yeah, I just want to make sure that this is a space where even people who came up in a certain system know that like you can help make this better. It doesn't have to be that way. And also that if you experience this stuff, like you can speak up about it too. Just because like we're speaking up about it now doesn't mean that you can't. Okay, so the number 2, which is the other issue that came up often, was let's like weed the bad guys out. Like, oh, fuck these guys. Like, I can't wait until like we don't have any more of these asshole chefs anymore. I honestly feel like canceling individuals is like justice theater. And that's a pretty unpopular opinion. And I understand that like accountability is real. Like that's definitely something that I want to be happening out there. But like going after one individual and putting all of our anger and collective frustration behind destroying this one person is not, that is justice theater. It makes us temporarily feel vindicated. And maybe it does help like survivors of that particular individual's abuse like feel better and like find closure. And I hope that in that case that it does happen. But I hope that the survivors find closure and peace through any method that they can. But ultimately, canceling one guy is not going to significantly prevent future wrongdoing, because truly the system that created him is still in place, and it still has plenty of problematic people just waiting in the wings, ready to be the next person that we all want to cancel. The system is still in place, grooming people to be problematic as fuck. And then the third thing that I saw often in my comments and DMs over the last couple of days is, wow, the restaurant industry is so bad. I'm glad my industry isn't like this. And my response to that is like, yes, the restaurant industry is quite seedy. Thank you. And to anybody wanting to use the phrase labor shortage right now, FYI, this is the kind of shit we're talking about and don't want to keep going back to and like being paid like shitty wages to put up with. So if you're a restaurant owner or executive chef and you're like, oh, where the fuck is everybody? This is why. This is where everybody is. We're all like, no, thank you. But restaurant industry is far from the only industry that is like this. I'll list a couple like really prominent examples. Video game industry is really terrible for women and anybody really. That's a super toxic environment. And that's like between the players and the industry. And politics, like politics is like rife with sexism and misogyny and like serious wrongdoing. And even industries that have experienced fallout from like the Me Too and Time's Up movements aren't completely healed or much better than what's going on in restaurants right now either. Like Harvey Weinstein was not the only perpetrator of these crimes in that industry. And look how much work it took to even get that guy to face justice. There's so much work to do in so many other industries. I mean, in the case of politics, I'm just going to name 2 Supreme Court justices and 1 former president, Brett Kavanaugh, Clarence Thomas, and Donald Trump, all of which have had multiple allegations lobbied against them, and none of them had any negative consequences. None significant anyway. And personally, I'm spending a lot of time trying to study other women's experiences in male-dominated fields. And it's pretty remarkable how even the most highly respected professions in our society, like doctors and lawyers, are still subject to many of the same microaggressions, and honestly worse too. Like it's not just the restaurant industry, although that is what the main subject is of this particular article. And the reason why I bring this stuff up is that the thing that we need to do moving forward, in my humble opinion, is a lot of self-reflection. We need intersectionality in our activism, which is like inclusion of people of other demographics in what it is that we're trying to do when we're trying to like make the world better. And honest self-reflection, because seriously, we are all complicit in this, in enabling this kind of behavior and enabling the system that encourages this behavior. For the record, again, I don't think that for the record, I believe the survivors that came forward and participated in the Seattle Times articles, and I do not think that they did anything to deserve the abuse and misconduct that they experienced. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that society and industry at large, we are participating in a system that not only enables, but also encourages like the worst of the worst to rise to the top. And like, we need to think about what we're all doing personally, and whether or not what we're doing is helping or hindering the situation. Okay. And also, just so y'all don't think I'm like yelling at y'all like a hypocrite over here, I personally have learned so much over the last 15 months about my role in toxic masculinity, my own internalized sexism and misogyny, and internalized colonialism and colorism and racism, like you name it. I had completely bought into the system of like of patriarchy and like paying your dues and all that toxic shit. I completely bought in, and truthfully, I'm experiencing a pretty heavy existential crisis currently, where I'm really trying to figure out what my goals are, what success looks like, and how much of these goals are based like directly in my experience with the patriarchy. So just so y'all know, I'm trying really hard to decolonize myself and my actions. And so I get it. It's like hard and scary sometimes to like tackle these like difficult issues, and like really take a hard look at yourself in the mirror and see what it is that you're doing to like make things sometimes worse, like a lot of the times worse. But I want you to know that I'm with you. We can learn and be better together. And I think it would be really helpful if we all just like tried really hard to like look at ourselves. I wish I could hug you guys right now. That was like such a very heavy admission for myself over the last year. And then honestly, like now for y'all to know that about me. Yeah, so that's kind of a thing. Okay, so I'm not just trying to yell at y'all is the point of that. Okay, so moving on, I thought of an analogy that I think maybe could help showcase why we have to think of this in like a systemic fashion and not about individuals. Okay, so it's kind of like a food foraging analogy. Guys like Eduardo Jordan and Blaine Wetzel of Lummi, oh my God, what was it called? The Willows Inn on Lummi Island. These guys are like mushrooms that you find in the woods. Like if you're out there foraging and you happen to find like, oh, there's a mushroom right there. Like, yeah, you see the one mushroom and then you cut it. But they just happen to be the most prominent part of an entire ecosystem and network of organisms that enable and honestly encourage that bad behavior. This analogy is flawed because like typically when you're foraging mushrooms, it's like a good thing to see the thing out. But I didn't want to use the bug analogy because it's kind of like an infestation of bugs. Anyway. So that is to say, we need to zoom out and start looking at our environments in general, our systems in general, and not just burn these guys at the stake and expect that to be enough. Because that is the danger in hyper-focusing on these individuals, is that when you get just that little bit of justice and accountability out of these individuals, it makes it feel like we really, really did something. But the thing is, like, that stuff is just going to keep happening until we discuss and acknowledge like the root causes of these problems. So something I had learned about Eduardo specifically, and then was like last year. He was on the Ezra Klein show. I think it was Ezra Klein, but he was on NPR because he had just won the James Beard Award, and so he outlined like all of the restaurants that he learned from, that he like came up in and learned from, and they were all like the most awarded and accoladed restaurants in the country at the time, and definitely chefs that I have idolized in my own career. But the thing is, so you learn, so obviously he learned like amazing techniques and a lot of cool things about food and cooking and like produce and like seasonality. All of these things you learn from these amazing chefs. But you also learn when you are working in kitchens like that, how the kitchen is supposed to run. And fam, those chefs are not in a position to teach any of us how to manage anything. That's just not what they have prioritized over the past few years, and it's not what has been getting them awards. It's not what's been paying the bills. Like making sure that their staff is happy and well taken care of is not something that any of them seem to have prioritized, and they just are passing on this toxic environment onto everybody because everybody's like, oh well, that is what has been awarded, and so we should just run with it. And it sucks because he turned around and then started to advocate for his own humanity and his community. But unfortunately, because he learned all of these terrible management habits, and honestly, like human habits from the problematic chefs in like Michelin-starred restaurants, he then became an oppressor when he was already coming from an oppressed space. This is what we mean by intersectionality, by the way, which is that you need to bring people with you. Like you can't build the case for your own humanity on the necks of other people's humanity. I'm not the most equipped to talk about definitions of patriarchy and intersectionality. But like I said, I'm learning. And so I wanted to share a resource with you all that I found super duper helpful, which is a creator on both TikTok and Instagram. And I believe that she just started a YouTube channel by the handle of Herspective. Yeah, she's a scholar about women's issues, feminism, and then also the way that feminism is also really helpful for men. Yeah, so I highly recommend. It's really easy to digest. She's really funny and like very relatable. And I think we should make it easier for ourselves to learn about this stuff because we need to. And I know that there's a lot of things that are like pulling your attention in all different directions. But it's very important that like we keep up on this stuff. I talk about this in other, I've talked about this in other live streams where I realized that like my engagement in politics was only during like the presidential election. And at that point, it seems like, oh my God, these problems are so big. And it's because I haven't been paying attention to them over the last 4 years. And it's like, well, fam, like let's make time to pay attention to these issues, because when you're dealing with this follow, it's really easy to like lose perspective, but like it's so important that like we have a foundation of knowledge moving into these and handling these issues. Okay. Okay, so anyway, that was all to say that I think it is not good to focus super hard on this single individual, but rather at the system at large. I personally think that we should be looking at cases like the Willow's Inn and Eduoardo Jordan like they're the ghost of Christmas future. And that is to say, it's showing us all of the ways of how we are capable of unintentionally causing a lot of harm and pain with our everyday behaviors. And the fact is that like there is still time for us to edit and revise and like really examine what it is that we're doing and why we're doing it before the next, oh my gosh, the next guy comes out and is like hurting more people. So here's a pretty timely example of how people super don't examine their own behaviors nearly enough. Yesterday, I found one of the brave staff members on Instagram, one of the ones who walked out on Sunday. And she had posted something acknowledging that they had walked out in solidarity and like the courage that she and her colleagues had shown and how proud she was of like the high integrity move. And like, yes, 100%, that was amazing. And then someone was commenting on her post saying, hey, so-and-so at such and such restaurant says he'd love to hire y'all. And that comment got a bunch of likes because, you know, it was sweet. It was really nice to see that like there was somebody else in the restaurant community who would be there to like hire these people. But here's the thing about that. I used to work at the restaurant that person was recommending. And I quit that job because the ownership / management there, including the man who was named in the comments, had all done hella inappropriate stuff, either in front of me or to me while I worked there. And I had no one to report that stuff to because, again, it was the owners and the chef who were doing these like really messed up things. And yeah, there was no recourse for me. And so it's like, I know that kitchen is toxic and I didn't want her to like hop out of a toxic environment right into another one. They're all sweet dudes who are really friendly and nice. And like, I would eat there because the food is delicious. The bar is very well managed, in terms of like what they have on hand. It's like really well stocked. But they have zero awareness of the bullshit that they personally pull. And that is a huge issue. Like, you can see it in all of Jordan's responses that he had no idea that he was doing anything wrong. He just thought that's how things are. And it's not enough anymore to be like, oh, I didn't know, because the stuff is coming out publicly and we should be learning from it. So anyway, I messaged her and was like, hey, just FYI. And I told her all the stuff I just told y'all. And I hope they find good jobs. I hope they find good jobs. And I hope if there's a GoFundMe out there or something for them, like, please, somebody let me know because I want to send them money. That was, so good. Okay. So anyway, again, I do want to think of this stuff as a learning moment for all of us. Ghost of Christmas Future. And this is truly our chance to make good moving forward. If we can look at ourselves and not immediately reject what it is that we're seeing out of these other guys that are in question, but like maybe see how we are similar to them and how we can be better. So in that light, I would like to go over a couple of the moments mentioned in the original article from Sunday morning, and talk about and look at them through the lens of systemic issues and how we should all learn from these moments. Okay, so we'll just go in chronological order through the article itself. So Jordan had acknowledged trying to kiss a coworker while on a work-related trip, which he said was, quote, not acceptable and, quote, a learning moment. And Jordan said that no one he's worked with has approached him with similar concerns. Ugh. I mean, this is like it, dude. Like, did you like create an environment where people did feel comfortable talking to you? Or is it the kind of environment where you would laugh off their concerns? Or were you mean to them in a way that made it so that they didn't feel comfortable talking to you? Like, again, this is like some really hard introspection that we all need to do. It's like, how open are you to negative feedback from your colleagues? And honestly, in your subordinates, because that's likely how he would have thought of these people that he was abusing. So yeah. Oh man. Here's another quote from the article. In an industry where Jordan acknowledges has a problem with sexual harassment, he said in an email, quote, I have worked hard to ensure that such conduct has no place at any of my restaurants. Workplace harassment of any nature or sexualizing women is not a culture I promote or who I am or what I'm about. I stand behind that. Well, literally, we're telling you right now that is like, whatever you were doing when you were working hard on making a safe environment for the people that work with you, it didn't work. Like, no, it didn't work. So instead of deflecting, we should take the feedback. Because, okay, I think We can all think that we're good people and that we're all doing the right thing, but honestly, like a lot of the times we aren't, especially if we're not intentional with our actions. And I personally, again, had a lot of realizations over the last year where I'm realizing all the shitty things that I've done, in terms of like being not that good a feminist and not that good an ally for other communities, or even myself, to be honest. And so I know that I fucked up. I didn't said a lot of shitty things. I made people shitty. I made people feel shitty when I shouldn't have. And honestly, it's just like being able to admit wrongdoing is like so huge. And that is not something that I was seeing a lot in this article from him. Okay. And so this is a quote from one of the survivors who came forward. And she said, quote, "He was my mentor. I would not be as strong of a cook without his guidance and qualified instruction," the line cook said. Quote, "But there was this other monster you had to deal with." And that is so heartbreaking. I think about it a lot, about the mentor relationship that is meant to happen in restaurants, because of the gender demographics in male-dominated industries. As a woman, it is very likely that your mentors, heroes, and bosses will be men. And it's apparently very easy for men to abuse that position of authority, or rather, I don't know. I don't even know if they think of it as abusing that position of authority, but they might have this idea of what it is to have a mentoring relationship with like a younger woman, because there really is like this super common trope in TV and movies that like, oh, once you realize that it's there, you can't unsee it. And it's always like an older man mentoring this young woman, like taking this woman under his wing, and then the relationship somehow becomes sexual or romantic in some way. And it is fucking gross. And so to me, what the issue with that is that like our media at large does like present this example of like what the social contract is between a mentor and a mentored person, and what the mentored person owes to the mentor for such services, which for the record is nothing. You don't owe shit to somebody who decided to take you under their wing, especially if it's in an environment where like you are getting abused and like maybe they're throwing you a lifeline. Like you don't owe them shit. That's human decency at that point. And yeah, you don't have to take it. And then there was something, the last moment that I really want to dive into was where one of the survivors, this is one of the older stories that was at Sitka and Spruce, which was not owned by Eduoardo Jordan, but owned by Chef Matt Dillon. And so Jordan did something out of line to this line cook, and the line cook went to the owner of the restaurant, Matt Dillon, and was like, "Hey, this is messed up." And he said, when the line cook spoke, quote, "When the line cook spoke to Dillon," she said, "he told her to confront Jordan and suggested that she had not set clear boundaries with him." Dillon says he recalls speaking to the line cook about the incident, but, quote, "did not say that she was implicit or that she was responsible for him doing that." He said that because the line cook and Jordan appeared to have a friendly relationship, he questioned whether the incident was that serious. He asked her how she wanted to handle the situation, and she said she would talk to Jordan. So I just want to say real quick, that is the laziest management I've ever heard of in my life. I think that is so deplorable. People don't come to you with a problem regarding your chef just to be told that they need to handle it themselves. No, they're asking you to intervene on their behalf. And again, it was so lazy. And so the way that should have been handled was that Mr. Dillon should have gone to Mr. Jordan and been like, "Hey, this is messed up. I need to talk to you about this. we can't have this kind of behavior moving forward. And he didn't. And so, which that kind of, like, I really wish that Dylan had stepped in and made it clear to Jordan that that kind of behavior would not be tolerated in his business establishment. Like, he's not going to pay you to abuse other employees. But again, that assumes that Dylan himself had taken the time to think about what kind of behavior is and is not acceptable in his restaurant, and whether or not he found Jordan's behavior to be punishable or negative. And honestly, I can't really speak to whether or not he does feel that way. Yeah, but if you're going to call yourself a good person, a good manager, a good business owner, a good employer, then yeah, you need to confront the person in question and make it extremely explicitly clear that that is unacceptable. Gang, I've been talking about this for 40 minutes, longer than I wanted to. Okay, so the fact that Dylan was mentioned in this article too kind of speaks to me, is kind of a hint that the problem does run quite a bit deeper than just Eduardo himself. And so I think that that's another reason why we should be I think we should be zooming out and looking at a larger scale problem. Okay, so let's talk about what it is to apologize. Because apparently people don't really know how to do that these days. Really quick though, before we do that, I want to get some announcements out of the way. Some channel announcements out of the way. On Friday, I'll be uploading a video on how to find a secret steak in your chuck roast. And this week, sometime this week, I think on Thursday, I'll be starting a new live stream series exclusively for Patreon patrons, where I will be, for 5 weeks, we'll be doing a different small whole animal each week, chicken, duck, rabbit, chicken, duck, over the 5 weeks. And I'm going to unbag them for y'all on the live stream. Excuse me, break them down. I'll talk about what it is that my prep and cooking plans are for those particular proteins, and then I'll share the results all on Patreon. So head over there. There will be links in the description below if you want to check it out. I was going to tell a cute story about chicharrones that my boyfriend made over the weekend for a palate cleanser. Not that the chicharrones themselves were palate cleansers, but for a palate cleanser for this live stream, because it's gotten kind of heavy. But maybe I'll tell it at the very end, because, oh, goddamn, we have so much still to talk about. Okay, so how to apologize. Now, if you want to take a look at Jordan's apology, the full text is available on his Instagram. And I've linked you below to the Seattle Times article that also includes the full text of his apology. And there's a lot of him sidestepping and not taking accountability, which, like, we've seen at least 2 other very prominent public apologies recently. One from Belcampo regarding their mislabeling fraud situation, and then the other one even before that from the Willow's Inn team. And all 3 of these apologies are like the most weird, deflective, gaslighty, non-acknowledging versions of an apology. Like, straight up, they're not apologies. They're just like blowing off steam. It's so frustrating. Okay. I just want to say, for the record, not remembering, which is what Jordan kept saying about his misconduct, does not absolve you. It just means that your shitty behavior meant so little to you that it didn't stick in your brain. And that is just extra insulting to all of your victims and all of us watching it. It's so insulting. Like, don't say that you don't remember, because that is just, it's not the flex you think it is. It's not the defense you think it is either. Okay, so a true apology requires actually acknowledging that the thing happened. Like, just start there. Just acknowledge that the thing happened. You don't say, I didn't know. Don't say, I don't remember. Don't say it didn't happen like that. You say this thing happened. Acknowledge it. Don't gaslight us. Also, you don't get to describe yourself as a good person if your good behaviors don't convey it. Something else that was happening a lot in his statements included in the original article, but then also during his official apology, was like, I really care about this stuff. Like, I worked really hard to like create an environment where that we have a zero tolerance policy, blah, blah. Well, like, did you though? Because like the results aren't good. And so like you can talk the talk, you can say all of those things, but friend, we just saw all of that shit. And like, you can't convince us that it didn't happen. And I saw this recently where like, somebody was like, if you don't call yourself an ally, how else could I tell that you're an ally if you don't just tell me that? Like, what of your behaviors actually show that you're doing the thing that you purport to do? So I posed this question to that apology, like, how would we know that you believe in equality and a non-toxic work environment if you didn't say it? Could we see it in your actions? Could we see it in your restaurants? Could we see it in the demographic breakdown and the happiness of your employees? Yeah, it sucks because it's really easy to say the right words. It's really easy to get good copy from anywhere. Really, like, it's really easy to say like, oh, I really care, and like use the buzzwords. But like, yeah, if you're not actually doing the thing, stop saying the words. It doesn't count. It's so similar to what happened at Belcampo last month, where they were like, we really believe in sustainability and transparency. And it's like, then stop mislabeling it and upcharging people for the wrong kind of meat. God. Okay. And so then I did promise that I would give y'all steps on what to do next. One really easy thing to do that is tangible and is like easy to wrap your brain around is to donate money to the people who quit, and also to the people who came forward. Yeah, because like, seriously, like their hearts are broken, and it's hard. It's really hard, and I wish there were any way to like make them feel better. And I know that anonymity is really important, so I don't really know logistically how to get these donations to them, but I really wish that someone would set up like a GoFundMe or a Patreon or something or like a Venmo where we could just donate to a general fund to help support these people, because definitely the people who quit in solidarity last Sunday, they are risking their financial health during a pandemic, and that was super noble of them, and they deserve to not starve because of it. And so I hope that there are people out there who can, in solidarity, support them. A few of the staff members, I guess, run like some side hustle pop-up stuff, and you can find them on Instagram if you do a little bit of sleuthing. I'm not really tight with those guys. I have recently followed a few of their pop-up businesses, and I do hope that I can go patronize them. So if you know them, or if you can figure out like where they are, it will take a little bit of sleuthing because they did want to stay anonymous, and that's super understandable. But yeah, that would be like a really nice way to like show them like genuine support in what they're doing. And then secondly, the big thing, the much kind of harder thing to do, is to work on yourself. Again, this is a systemic issue, and we are all at least a little bit complicit in it. And so it's really easy to like stand on the sidelines and be like, oh, that's so fucked up. I can't believe they did that, blah, blah. And then turn around and do something also equally or less equally fucked up towards somebody else. So just, yeah, it's time that we really reckon with what it is that our industry does, and whether or not we want it to be that way anymore. And to anybody, again, who grew up in that system and internalized all these things, I'm inviting you to come with us and make it better. And yeah, then we don't have to worry about canceling. The other thing too is that those apologies, oh my gosh, this is so random. But the other thing about the apologies is that all three of those big official apologies, like you can tell that they had very low level, they were just really low level answers to the accusations lobbied against them. And you can tell that they don't spend any time thinking about this stuff. So like, do yourself a favor and think about this stuff ahead of time so that if you are ever, God forbid, in a position to need to apologize, you understand what it is that you're apologizing for. And also, hopefully, it will prevent you from doing things that require you to issue a public apology. It's like that snake eating its own tail thing. Anyway, that's all I really want to say about the Eduoardo Jordan situation. Thank you so much for watching. I really, really wanted to talk about some pretty heavy stuff that's coming up in the food world outside of this particular situation, including droughts that are already affecting farmers and livestock, and then also an update about the JBS hacking situation, because it's just an amazing amount of more of the same. Maybe I'll post this doc and just so the information will be out there. But I did want to tell y'all, I want to take the last like 9 minutes of this live stream and talk about something nice and fun and delicious and actually meat related. Which are these chicharrones. I'll post a couple videos and some stuff onto Instagram sometime this afternoon that show the chicharrones that my boyfriend made on Sunday afternoon. And they were really delicious. If you've never had a fresh chicharron, they were so awesome. So I'll tell you the process that we went through, which is that we acquired a bag of pig skin that had like varying levels of fat still on the skin. Pressure cooked them. Oh no, he slow cooked them in our Instant Pot for a long time, which is really lovely because it didn't let all the pork skin smell out into our apartment. And then he laid them out onto, half sheet pans and dried them in a really low oven. Like he set our oven to like 190, 200, like it's pretty much as low as your oven can go. And then those stayed in there to dehydrate for like 8 to 10 hours, I want to say. Like I think we left it overnight. And then on Sunday, we went to our local Smart Food Services and bought a big jug of rice bran oil, which is a high smoke point, high temperature oil that can get as hot as it's rated as going, like you can safely use it up to temperatures of like 490 degrees, which for chicharrones, you want to fry them at a pretty hot temperature so that they puff up even as much as possible. So then we got our biggest pot together. We used, we both have a pair of like those long gastro tongs. So he used those to hold the chicharrones under the surface of the oil. And they turned out absolutely beautiful. I thought it was so sweet and really delicious. We salted them immediately. And those were actually a gift for his coworkers. So like, I only got to eat a little bit of them, but like still they were so lovely. So yeah, gang, that's about it. Thank you all so much again for joining. I really, really appreciate your time and attention. Again, later this week, we'll be coming out with quite a bit more. And I really appreciate that you were here to listen to me about what was going on in the restaurant industry. So I appreciate you. Have a wonderful week. And yeah, stay safe out there. Bye. Oh, before I go, don't forget to subscribe and like this video if you found any value in it. And I appreciate y'all. Okay, there it is. Bye.